Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Whole 10 Yards. I am your host, Julio Zepeda. We got two very exciting games, Sunday Night Football and another one during the middle of the day. So come on back. We'll get started and jump right back into it. Let's go. First game we're looking at, guys, Philadelphia against Minnesota. Sam Bradford going back to Philly. He's going to give the big old finger right to that organization. He's undefeated coming in on an undefeated team, coming off a bye week, which is actually important because they have an extra week to study against them. Philadelphia, their last game, looking at the tape, they were pretty even. They only had 12 first downs. Half was rushing, half was passing, so that's kind of even right there. 94 rushing yards, 145 passing yards. Not really the same offense that we were seeing the first few weeks in the season. The offense had 0 touchdowns. The scoring came off a kickoff return, a pick return, and a couple field goals. They struggled against a Washington Redskins defense that isn't really that great. Isn't basically Minnesota. Also, a thing that stood out right before the half, Washington ran 5 run plays in a row. That tells me basically that they're not afraid to run the ball at Philadelphia, and Philadelphia can't stop it. You're going into a situation where there's less than 2 minutes on the clock, and you feel comfortable running the ball. That just means that you're having your way with the defensive line of Philadelphia, and they can't stop it. A lot of penalties for the Philadelphia offense, kept stalling their drives. A lot of stuff was being called back. That was a major factor also. And there was a lot of pressure on Carson Wentz this game. A lot of man coverage, and I think he was struggling with. But the important part of this pressure was that it came without blitzing. So that means Minnesota doesn't have a field day. They have an extra week to practice against them, and they only need 3, maybe 4 players, 4 defensive linemen to get to Carson Wentz. It's going to be out of control. Sam Bradford is definitely going to get his win. But let's talk a little bit about the Minnesota game. They did have that bye week in week 6, so we looked at the tape from week 5. They played the Houston Texans, 351 total yards, 96 rushing yards, 255 passing yards. They did give up 2 sacks, but the defense is basically the story here. The number 2 overall defense and the number 2 ranked rush defense. They also scored on a punt return, so they're winning on all facets, basically. Offense, defense, and special teams. Complete game. This is why they're undefeated, and I think they're going to continue to be undefeated. We're picking the Minnesota Vikings to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jose is going to beat out Danny. Sorry, Danny. Welcome back, guys. All right, looking at the primetime game of the week, the game of the week. Arizona Cardinals hosting the Seattle Seahawks in Arizona, obviously. A place where actually Seattle has played really well. They've won the last 3 games in a row, dating back to last season, obviously, in Arizona. So you know that Seattle's a team that obviously can travel really well. We're going to look at week 6 a little bit, give our prediction, obviously. And then somebody might think that, I'm biased towards the team I'm going to pick, and you guys might see why. I have a few Seahawks, Seattle stuff back there. Anyway. Arizona, they played really well. Obviously, their running back, David Johnson. Carson Palmer just came back last week after missing a game, the first time missing his game due to a concussion. But he's back. He's healthy, Fight on. He's fighting on. We like that. But they had 396 yards total, 171 rushing yards. David Johnson just keeps on killing it, so make sure you start him in your fantasy roster, obviously. 225 passing yards. The thing that stood out of that, there are no sacks. There were no sacks given up last week against the New York Jets, which is kind of surprising. Todd Bowles, the head coach, previously defensive coordinator, he runs that defense. So it's kind of surprising and kind of disappointed that he didn't. His defense wasn't able to produce any sacks. He had 36 minutes of possession. You have really good run defense. Looking at the tape, they plug up the first hole a lot. What that means basically, where the hole designated for the running back to run was plugged up. So Matt Forte had to try and come back or try to jump to the next hole that really wasn't open. That's why he had a lackluster game. They really couldn't just get the ball rolling. So it was a good run defense on Arizona's part. They also have a really good offensive line. They do a lot of zone blocking scheme, a lot of combo blocking as well. Basically, what that means, the guard and the guard and the tackle will combine on the first player, and then they're going to move on to the second level. Second level being the linebacker or safety, whatnot. They're really good at that. They get to the second level extremely fast, especially their center. So that means the holes are opening up a lot faster for David Johnson to run through, and that's a part of the reason why he's having such a great year. They have the number 4th ranked rushing offense. That's why stars of the team obviously would be David Johnson. Larry Fitzgerald, obviously, also. And one of the things that really stood out, the number 4th rushing, offense, it's going to be great to see they're going up against the Seattle Seahawks defense. It's ranked number 1 in rush and they're actually number 1 overall and number 1 in the rush defense. So it's going to be a great matchup. What really stood out last week, they played the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, you guys might remember Julio Jones, wide receiver for the Falcons, had that 300-yard game a couple weeks ago. He was kind of shut down the week after, but last week he didn't go ballistic, but he had a great game, 139 yards and a touchdown. Richard Sherman was extremely angry. I'm sure Christian remembers that. He mentioned to me that Julio Jones was in his head, and he definitely was. Richard Sherman was actually mad, though, because of a busted coverage, miscommunication on that defense. So you bet your butt that they're going to be, on that. This is probably going to be a key this week because you're facing Larry Fitzgerald, a future Hall of Famer in my eyes. I think so. Somebody's phone just went off. Wow. Just kidding. It's okay. But Seattle, they had 333 total yards, only 72 rushing, which is kind of a disappointment. You have Christine Michael in the backfield. Yeah, he got a touchdown. So you definitely want to obviously start him in your fantasy roster as well. But they need to run the ball a little bit more. Seattle also does not have that perennial or that all-star, wide receiver, but they do have an all-star tight end, Pro Bowl tight end, Jimmy Graham. They need to get him the ball some more, run the ball some more, and just make sure that they can get pressure on Carson Palmer. And that's going to be one of my keys, actually. Michael Bennett, extremely versatile defensive lineman. Great pass rusher. He'll drop in pass coverage as well. He's extremely good at tackling. So if he can get to Carson Palmer, and I think he will. I mean, they had 4 sacks against Matt Ryan last week. What do you think they're going to do against Carson Palmer and Arizona's line? I think it's going to be a great matchup. It'll be close, but I think Seattle's going to pull it out. I'm going to put this on. We're choosing the Seattle Seahawks, Sunday Night Football. Tune in. Thanks for another great week on the Holton Yards guy. We'll be back next week. Again, I am Julio Zepeda, your host, the Holton Yards. Follow us on Twitter. That's all we got, Twitter. And subscribe to my YouTube channel. All right.